pleasure of a man without me.
I'm so sorry. And we're on the air. But that's a good thing. We truly are sorry. Starfleet Boy, unfortunately, sometimes, things happen. We go through a
It's
wormhole
okay.
or a time
Yeah.
distortion, and it's just the way it is. But you're here now to do
Yeah,
the awesome episode where the Enterprise gets a virus.
it does. A computer virus.
A computer virus. Even in the future, computer viruses can happen. And we're going to talk a lot about that. I think I have a lot of questions. Do you do anything with computers at all? Do you know about computers?
I mean, not really, but I mean, you
Okay.
can't live in this day and age and not know nothing about computers. Yeah.
That's true. I know like a lot of things about computers, but not enough to be like a master
Mm-hmm.
level computer person. But but I did work for the fruit company for 6 years, and
Oh,
yeah, so it's not the
in like
same
in
as.
like the Genius Bar, right?
No, I was actually an assistant store manager, and
Huh.
but I could have gone the genius track. I had a choice, and I chose to go
You chose
customer.
management.
Well, the reason I chose management is because at the Apple Store, this is funny that we're talking about this. At the Apple Store, I felt the experiences I wanted were customer facing, like more like solving their solution needs, like, oh, I need to outfit like my whole entire design studio with computers, or my audio studio. So I really enjoyed that part of it. And so as a manager, you
Mhm.
still got to be on the sales floor and work with the sales team. And I happen to be a really good salesperson. I was
Hey,
number
hey.
one. No surprise there. Starfleet Boy is an amazing salesperson. But I happen to be an amazing salesperson, and so I chose the sales route. But I often was behind the Genius Bar, helping and learning from the insanely intelligent Mac geniuses that were there.
Oh,
So
I have actually, this is a pretty fitting story I have. So I had a like first generation MacBook Pro, right?
mhm.
Like I bought like my laptop was one of the like, the first runs. So it was kind of like wonky a little bit, but it still worked fine. Um and I had it out and my cat knocked over a glass of water onto the keyboard and
Oh
I was like,
boy.
"Oh." So I took it in and they're like, "Oh, it's going to be like, I don't remember how much it was, like $1,300 or something to get it fixed."
Oh my gosh, it's like
I'm
a
like,
new computer almost, right?
"Right." I'm like, "Okay, huh." So I get it fixed and I come back and I pay for it and I'm like, what was wrong with it? Like, because I'm pretty handy. Like, I build PCs all the time.
Oh, neat.
Was it something I could have just done myself? And the guy that was helping me, like, just looks at me like I'm insane. And he starts busting up and he's like, hey, Bill, hey, Linda, come over here. This guy, oh, wait, I was like, what's wrong with it? And they're like, oh, we had to replace the logic board. I'm like, logic board? Was it like the motherboard or something? And then I'm like, that sounds like something I could have just done myself. And then he called people over, and they're all just laughing at me because
Are you serious?
I thought I could change a logic board.
This is in Los Angeles?
Yeah,
Oh wow. If Apple heard about this, I hope you wrote a letter, because
yeah.
I can
I just thought it was
assure
funny. I
you.
was like,
No,
okay.
that's totally I no longer work for Apple. So my opinions are my own. I don't represent Apple
Right.
computers. I just want to say this. But in my day, I don't know if standards have changed, but in my
Hmm.
day, that would be completely unacceptable. In fact, we probably would have had to have, you know, compare had you complained. So you should have complained.
I just thought it was funny that they were giving me a hard time about wondering if I could change the logic board myself.
Unacceptable. Were I the manager at that Apple store, I assure you that those employees would have been disciplined appropriately and court-martialed. So I apologize that you had that experience.
Nothing to be sorry about. It was funny. It's a good story.
Now
Yeah.
the Enterprise has a virus.
Ah.
I'm gonna do my short summary of the episode, and then we'll jump right into episode discussion.
Cool.
But awesome. Just riles me up, the Apple Store. I'm gonna have to go in and find out who those people were now.
This was years ago, so who
Starfleet.
knows where they are.
I think of Apple as like Starfleet. There, I still have connections in the Admiralty. I'll be able to find out. You know, it's
All
like
right.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I wish I could.
Obviously not.
um, so the Enterprise gets a distress call from the USS Yamato, which we also saw in a previous episode. Where Silence has lease. When the Enterprise gets caught up with Nagilum, he uses the Yamato to kind of play some tricks on them, which are an interesting parallel to this episode. But anyways, in this episode, they go to the USS Yamato's location, which is in the neutral zone. Well within the neutral zone, which is a violation of lots and lots of treaties. But the captain of the Yamato sent out a distress signal because his ship stopped working. There were some catastrophic failures occurring, and the ship's systems were just not responding. So he was hoping that the Enterprise, which was nearby, lucky enough, and their crew could help them to overcome some of their technical problems. But unfortunately, shortly after they meet up with the Yamato, something terrible starts happening, and the Yamato explodes, and it's kind of horrifying. Everyone's like, "What the f just happened?" And then a Romulan warbird decloaks right when that happens, and so everyone on the crew thinks that maybe the Romulan warbird was responsible for the explosion. The Romulans sent a very stern warning to Captain Picard, but he stands his ground and he's like, I'm not until I'm satisfied as to what caused the destruction of the Yamato. So, unbeknownst to Captain Picard, the Romulan vessel was probably experiencing some similar problems. They'll find that out later. But in the meantime, they're all a little scared and freaked out because the Romulans are threatening to start a war, and Captain Picard really needs to find out what's wrong with what happened to cause the destruction of the Yamato. Well, it's determined that it was an internal problem. Geordi and Data do the necessary research and analysis to support that, and they discover that it's probably something like these things probably wouldn't happen, but it was just like a series of events that occurred and the Yamato exploded. Meanwhile, the Enterprise starts exhibiting a few little weird glitches as well, like the door is not opening, or in one scene, Captain Picard orders his tea and he gets like a plant, which is a pretty funny scene. So then it's discovered now that the Enterprise is plagued with the same problems, and through some investigation, they learn that it's a virus. Now, the virus, how did it arrive? Well, Captain Picard's interest in the whole situation is piqued even more because the captain of the Yamato claimed that he had discovered the homeworld of the Iconians. Am I saying it right? Is the Iconians?
I think so. I think it's the Iconians.
Weren't you paying attention? No, just kidding. It was
They would say it so fast, and I was like, "What are they
the
saying?" Like,
yeah, no, I kind of forgot too. But I think it is the Iconians, and the Iconians are like an ancient, super, super ancient, advanced civilization that has been lost into legend. It's kind of like what the Time Lords are like in Doctor Who, the new Doctor Who. There was a time war, they're gone, and we only know about them through legend and like a few little glimpses here and there. The Iconians have vanished from history. I'm having a sip. This is a Starfleet Boy After Dark episode, so we have some adult beverages that we can consume. Anyways, all of this is happening, and so Data, Picard, and Worf decide to beam down to the planet. Meanwhile, above the planet, Riker, who's in command, is faced again with the Romulan ship. There's like some tension there. And then they discover at this point, finally, that the Romulans are suffering from the same problem, but the Romulans are pretty stubborn and probably won't accept their help. Anyways, when they get to the Iconian kind of station, which we find out is a transporter pad, they're able to kind of loosely decipher the language. And when Data thinks he's activating an override, he instead activates this portal. And we find out that the way that the Iconians traveled through space was through these like dimensional, or sorry, rather I should say trans space portals that they can
Portals,
create.
yeah,
Yeah, using
doorways.
doorways, using energy, and they could travel anywhere in space. I'm not sure if you can travel in time, but definitely anywhere in space. um, Captain Picard realizes that the Iconians must have survived in this way, and maybe they're still spread throughout the galaxy. As far as I know, we never talk about the Iconians again on Star Trek, but pretty interesting. They make it back to the ship, Worf and Data, and then Captain Picard has to take a chance before he overrides some systems and causes like a chain reaction because the probes can't launch, and so he has to jump through one of the doors, and he ends up on the Romulan ship. And there's a great scene where the Romulans are about to arrest him, and then he's beamed out miraculously right in time, and he says, "Not today, Commander." And I think that just about covers it. That's the whole episode.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Sounds right. All right, cool. So,
I mean, did you get
what did you
the
think?
part where Data gets zapped, and that's the, and then his internal system purges the
Oh yeah, that's
virus,
how they
and that's
solve
how
the
they solve
virus.
the virus problem.
Thank you. That's an important part.
But it's just funny. It's just like turn it off and then turn it back on. Okay, like that's how
true.
you fix the virus. Okay, cool.
So I don't know about you, but every virus. Well, I'm a Mac user, so I've never actually had a virus that I know of on my computer.
There were Mac viruses. There are some.
I'm sure, but I just personally have never. I've been lucky. I've never had a virus, but I know that in the PC world, you get viruses all the time. How does your computer? The reason I was asking about computers earlier is how does your computer get rid of a virus? Like, what does it do?
Well, just the virus detection software and like
So like
spyware.
Norton or John McAfee?
And I don't have any of that stuff anymore. That stuff is honestly like McAfee or Norton is just like spyware now.
Oh,
Like within the last like 5 or 6 years, like sure, I'm sure it works, but like Windows firewall protection is so good now that unless you're like doing some really dumb stuff, you won't get a virus on your computer.
okay,
Like
cool.
it's solid now.
Is dumb stuff like visiting like naughty adult websites and things like that? Is that like the kind of dumb stuff
That or like downloading torrent stuff.
Oh, torrents, yep.
Right. Which is cool, but like you're gonna ruin your computer if you do that. So
Yeah, I think that's true for Macs too, actually, because I remember going back to the Apple Store days, the biggest cause of not viruses on a Mac, but just problems in general. Probably, I do know that you can't get a virus per se, but you can still get things like malware and spyware because the way it works on a Macintosh system, which is based on Unix, for our audience, I'm sure you might already know this, but is that it's all permission based. So like if the way the Iconian virus had to get on to the Yamato was that it had to somehow have a way into the Yamato. It's clear that Starfleet computers are running on Windows because this Iconian software this Iconian software was able to get in without anyone authorizing it. But on a Mac, Captain Picard would get an alert if the Enterprise computers were Mac-based. Captain Picard would get an alert, and it would say, a foreign software wants permission to install on your computer's database. And then, and then Captain Picard would be like, "What? No!" And that's the end of the virus. So we've established that the Starfleet computers are possibly running on Windows. Trek Discovery, maybe, I don't know. That's actually, it's set in the past, so it's definitely going to be like DOS or something.
Right.
So yeah. Anyways, this is how viruses work on computers, and it's very similar in the future. I don't think it's changed. Obviously, my oversimplification is probably nowhere near as accurate as how the Enterprise computer works. I mean, it is like one of the most advanced computers. And I really love that one scene where they're like, Captain Picard, they tell Captain Picard how the Yamato systems failed, and he's like, impossible. That can't happen.
Right.
It's like
and Geordi, what did Geordi say? He's like, oh, No, it's possible. It's just a like highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely, and it's true. It's like someone else, I forget if it was Picard or whoever, but someone says that the Enterprise is probably the most. Oh, it was Geordi. He says like the Enterprise is the most sophisticated machine that's ever been built in like Federation um history. And
Mhm.
let's think about that for a second. It's a pretty awesome achievement. Like, the Enterprise is pretty freaking amazing, and it's the Galaxy class is like the newest, most advanced, most amazing ship, and that was a first on the Next Generation. I remember in the original series, the 1701 was relatively new, but it had been in service for quite a while. It wasn't like brand spanking new like the
Right.
Enterprise D was.
It's a brand new ship, brand new crew.
Brand new ship, but brand new class of ship too. The Galaxy
Right.
class starship was introduced as well with this show. So, anyways, I did notice that the Yamato had some interesting differences. I don't know if those were like computer panels that they pulled out because they were working on them, but did you notice like the circuitry
Like the
thing?
bridge,
Mm-hmm.
like the shot of the captain. What was his name? Donald. I think he just calls him like Donald
I
because
know.
they're like
Well, it's
friends.
first name, but I can't remember. Let me see. Let's check the IMDb. But anyways, that scene that you were talking about
Like where
is
they're chatting when they first like come up on each other, and he's
that.
telling him about the Iconians.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so that's the scene that I'm talking about with all that stuff in the background,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, what is all that stuff? Hold on, it was Captain. Why won't IMDb tell me? I'm going to not. I'm going to have to get a new glasses prescription because.
But I think IMDb font is pretty small. So.
Well, I'm also looking at it on a tiny pad, which also, by the way, this is something that Star Trek basically invented. On the Next
Oh right.
Generation,
Well, yeah.
they use pads all the time, and talking about how technology's headed in that direction. Okay, so we don't. I don't know if I have the right episode up. Do I? Contagion yet? Oh, Captain Donald Varley.
Varley. Okay.
Captain Varley. So
He,
Donald
he
Varley.
probably says it like in the intro or something, but then after that, he
Captain
just calls
Varley.
him Donald because they're old pals.
They are old pals, and that's cool because we get a little bit more of Captain Picard's past in this episode, and you can see that Captain Varley shares a similar interest in archaeology as Captain Picard does. It's like, I bet they both had that same professor that we meet later, Professor Galen, um, in Star Trek: The Next Generation, who's Picard's mentor and who Picard let down because he chose to. Me, instead of becoming a genius, I chose to become a manager. Captain Picard, instead of becoming an archaeologist, chose to become a captain, and that's a problem with Galen that we get later on, which is going to be a fun episode. But this is kind of like opening the door for more episodes about Picard and archaeology, and later we'll meet
Yeah.
Bosch and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. What did you think of the remastered special effects? Do you remember the original special effects for this episode, first of all?
No, but I watched it not on like my laptop, but I have like a 45-inch 4K like Samsung TV, and it
Mm-hmm.
looked kind of bad. Like there were definitely scenes where it still looked super fuzzy. Like
Oh, really?
yeah,
Were you watching it using Netflix?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they show the remastered ones, right?
They do, but I understand from Galdu Scott, who's a Cardassian, it's for some reason Cardassians seem to have these large screens in there. Pretty awesome.
But my
um,
TV is not that big, for
well, I know,
TV
but
size now.
according to him, if you're gonna watch the remastered stuff on anything bigger than a laptop screen, if I'm not mistaken, he said something like this, that it has to be from the Blu-ray.
Oh, okay.
Because sometimes the bandwidth or something like that, but I'm
Mhm.
not sure. I'm always watching it on an iPad screen. I just have this little tiny screen, and it looks pretty good. But I will say there is some controversy because the doctor thought that he read that this season is produced by a different visual effects company, the
Company.
remastering,
I
and
just
he
heard the
noted,
last episode.
yeah,
and you
Yeah.
guys were talking about that. I was like, ah, that makes sense. It doesn't look as good.
Yeah, so I do not think that that's like something that it's kind of tough because when the Yamato exploded, it looked very like crisp, like the effects were decent as far as crispness, not fuzziness.
Mhm.
But I would just wish if they remastered it that they would have made it more realistic. Like it still looks kind of
It looks kind of wonky
wonky,
a
yeah.
little
Like
bit. Yeah.
they could have had like the ship kind of destroy itself a little more
Right.
majestically, or like something. I don't know. Could have just a little more of a majestic explosion, guys. The beautiful thing about remastering though is that they have they have the chance to always kind of go like how George Lucas keeps going back or used to keep going back to Star Wars and doing little tweaks here and there. It's just terrible for the consumer because that means we have to
Keep
like
shilling out more
more
money for
money.
the same
Yeah.
thing. I actually
I,
prefer like the original,
you mean like
like
not just no
no
remastering whatsoever, right?
remastering. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. I know there's some purists out there. I, on the other hand, like am all about remastering, but like if you're gonna do it, I want it to be done like where it's like amazing.
Mhm.
And I did notice that some of the things in this episode and a couple recent things like I was talking about in a future episode, but passed from this one because we're talking about why and pre-recorded. But in a future episode from the one you saw, we talk about how like the Klingon ship in another episode doesn't really look uh, like what I expected it to look like in terms of
Mhm.
the CG, the remastered CG. So yeah, there are some problems in season 2, but it doesn't affect the overall enjoyment, I don't think.
Nah, it's still good. Like
Yeah.
whatever. I'd watch it if it was like old school, 1989 quality.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
it's fine.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
The
Uh,
remastered stuff is just like bonus. Yeah, cool.
totally, totally. Let's see what else about this episode was cool. I like the scene where Dr. Pulaski is in sick bay with some of
Oh,
her
and
other.
she's like bitching to the like Asian dude. Like she's just standing next to that Asian guy and she's like blah 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 blah, and he's just like mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then she is talking to someone and like she leaves that dude and is still complaining. Like I'm like that's a random scene, but
I don't
whatever.
I don't remember that scene, but the
Yeah, it's like
scene
it goes from that to like the dude on the bio bed where she's like
of the
make a break
splint.
for his leg. Yeah, the
Right. Okay,
splint.
so that's the part. Oh, my poor little brain didn't catch everything, but like the part that I remember, the part that I definitely remember that stood out was the splint scene where she's like, explain. He's like, "What's a splint?" He's like, he's never heard of that, and she's like, "It's good old fashioned medicine," and
I
that's
feel
when I
like
kind.
anybody would know because that guy was like a nurse or another doctor, right? Like the dude
But
that was
think
in
about
sick
it.
bay.
You rely on this technology that works like 150% of the time. I mean, like the technology in Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Trek. Whoops, Star Wars technology is different if you go by the Millennium Falcon, but but in Star Trek, at least on the Enterprise and so far, like I've never seen a tricorder fail or a medical
Well, they
instrument.
set up like dampening fields and stuff, like
Right,
where.
but like a medical instrument too, I've never seen it fail. But in this case, since all of those things communicate with the Enterprise's computer, it's kind of cool because the Enterprise has like a little internet. Like, all these devices are smart devices. Like you have to imagine
Right.
that. So they're like completely connected to the computer and they're not working. So you can't heal like bones and things like that in the old way. So she's like totally like she's a little annoyed that this technician doesn't know
Well, he should be
that.
annoyed because he should know. Like, gee,
But I think it's not his fault. I mean, like who who has time for that if like in the future technology just works.
yeah, I see
but
your point.
it is good to have some old fashioned people
Well, she's
like
an
Dr.
old-fashioned gal.
She totally is.
Yeah,
So it's good to have her there, and that's what's the chief of the ship's medical department. I mean, obviously she has the most knowledge, so it's kind of a cool thing.
I thought that. I'm surprised you didn't notice that scene where she's like complaining about how
No,
everything's broken, and
I
she's
mean,
like, it's shot like she's talking to the guy, but then like midway through, she just walks away from him, and she's still complaining, and the guy just stands there like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's funny.
I watched the first half of this episode last night, and I think I started to drift into sleep. So that must have been the point, because what I remember is kind of like vaguely just that, and that's when I was like, oh, I better finish watching this episode tomorrow. I didn't actually fall asleep, but my brain was probably not functioning.
What did you think of Jordy and the turbo lift? What do you think of
that? That was pretty great. I liked how he was being tossed around. It was like pretty cheesy, and
right, but
spits him out onto the bridge, and he's all like shaken up and everything. But I did like it. I thought that was cool because it showed like how much torque and power these turbo lifts actually have.
Like, do the turbo? I always assume the turbo lifts just kind of went up and down. Do they go side to side too?
They can go in any direction that there's a track, and they kind of you can imagine that they kind of like either use some sort of anti-magnetism to travel, or some kind of like, or like the turbolift chamber is filled with like what they're probably like, the turbolift is like an omnidirectional hyperloop. That's what you gotta kind of imagine. More Star Trek inspired technology. Everything that we're doing today is inspired by Star Trek. That's the point of this. I think that was the point of this episode without even realizing it.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that we saw Romulans this episode. To me, that was pretty exciting. I like the Romulan commander. I like how the bridge seemed like much kind of different. It's like Romulans don't seem to sit down like they do on the Enterprise. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And then I liked how the Romulans are always kind of messing around with the Federation. Well, I guess they have to. I mean, they're not exactly friendly with one another.
Right.
But it's, kind of echoes that phrase, it's always a game of chess with the Romulans. So that was cool. Let's see what else. The Iconian technology was impressive to me. What about to you? Except I don't know about how I felt about the probe. That looked just like kind of like a really like a weird probe,
like a weird globe or something. Like,
yeah, but I guess if you're gonna make something that's like more technologically advanced than what we see on Star Trek, it has to seem like abstract and magical to a degree.
Yeah. No, I mean the probe was fine. It was fine.
I guess so. At first, I thought it was like just very 80s.
Pad, like how he started the launch sequence for the probes and then kept the doors closed, was like he was playing Simon. Boop, 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 boop. Like it was just like 3 big buttons. Like that's it. Like, 3 big buttons. That's all you need.
But Mr. Satyr, if I may,
be my guest.
If I may go into some headcanon here, I'm going to pull from Doctor Who again. Have you ever noticed how like the TARDIS doesn't really visually make any sense? Do you watch Doctor Who at all?
No.
Okay. Then this is for the benefit of the audience, but I'm going to explain it to you. For those of you who are Whovians, and for those of you who are not, like the TARDIS control is just like a bunch of random things. It might be like a bell. It might be like a keyboard that looks like this. It might be like a lever or a button or a switch, but it's kind of all just random. The Doctor somehow knows what to do just by his intention. So the TARDIS is kind of psychically connected to the Doctor, right?
Right.
Well, if you could create an interface that was somewhat psychically connected to you, you would need fewer buttons or larger buttons, because you could just press a button with a different intention and that would create a result. That's maybe why they're control pad. And also, if I may,
maybe so, but I mean, like, how could that control pad psychically link with a human? Like.
Well, I'm not just kidding when I tell you that I think the Iconians are the Time Lords, because if you look at the control pad and the whole like configuration, it's very much the same as what a TARDIS looks like. The little
Isn't
control.
It like a phone booth or something, or
no, but the inside. So I'm gonna give you some homework. Yeah, I'm gonna give you some
Okay.
homework. I'm gonna have you look. room control room, right? Like their transporter room or their not time travel, but like their travel room, right?
Right.
And then look up on Doctor Who the TARDIS console.
Okay.
And look up like the classic series console. It's a little bit more clean and interesting, like in the way that the Iconian thing is. And you will see that I might be correct in my in my conjecture here.
Okay, I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, you're gonna look it up right now.
It looks almost exactly like it.
Right. So yes.
Designers for that episode.
So yeah, Doctor Who connection. And now I just want you to know that earlier in the episode you were like, man, I can't believe you guys recorded Measure of a Man Without Me. Well, the Doctor's going to be very jealous that we talked about an episode that directly relates to the Time Lords. So you guys are even there. And Goldie Scott might also too. So he's very busy doing taxes for the Cardassians. He might be doing your taxes, Mr. Satyr. I don't know. I don't know if you're a client of Goldie Scott's.
No, I do my own.
Okay, very good. But anyways, that was one thing that I thought was really an interesting kind of, I don't know if it was intentional. There was a planned at one point, while the Next Generation, it might have even been this season. This is where the Doctor would know better than I. But at one point there was kind of like a loose plan or talk of doing a Doctor Who Star Trek crossover.
I've heard you guys talk about it before.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely something that like I think the two shows flirt with each other and flirt that they're in the same continuity or the same universe. So it's kind of a fun Doctor Who Star Trek thing.
The console is very similar.
Excellent. What else can we talk about this episode? I can't think of much.
Where Data gets zapped.
Yeah, what did you think of all that?
That was great. It's a great time.
I think Brent Spiner does this kind of like interesting thing though. Several times he does this like slower speaking Data, and I think I've heard it. This might be the first time we hear it. It's like he's like, Captain, do this,
right? Like it's kind of more robot voice than.
And I think it also like tugs at your heartstrings a little because you're like, oh no, Data's like damaged or something. Right.
Well, apparently he dies.
Oh yeah, that's right.
In the show too, like,
and he reboots.
He's gone, and Geordi like closes his eyes.
That's right.
Oh my god, knowing nothing,
But then he reboots. That's right.
But then he reboots, and the virus is gone, and Geordi's like, "Hot damn, that's a ticket."
There were a few like little lucky moments like that. Like for example, when the Romulan ship decloaks and they're kind of standing off, and she's
and they couldn't shoot the photon torpedoes or whatever.
Well, yeah, they just were having problems, and then the Romulan commander is like, we're claiming this planet for the Romulan Empire, and they're about to have a standoff, and then all of a sudden Riker realizes, they're having the same problems because their ship has like, the signal cuts off and it cloaks and then decloaks and it's like doing erratic things. Their lucky moment for the Enterprise because they could have been under attack. And I like the thing he says, like, fate, it, kind of, it always helps like the unfortunate children and starships.
Schools and starships named Enterprise.
Yeah, that one. Thank you.
Oh, and that scene also, which I noticed, where the Romulan sub commander, whatever her name was talking trash. She's like, "I'm gonna kill you guys" or whatever. And who was behind the console? I don't think it was Worf.
No, because Worf was on the planet.
Yeah, maybe it was. It
was like a.
Oh no, it was like some chick with a crazy hairdo.
Yeah,
that's
the
one thing I remember.
It was another security officer.
Mm-hmm. She's like, "Oh, they're firing!" And if you look, Deanna, grabs Riker's like arm, like.
Oh my gosh! I totally missed that.
Like she's like, "Oh," and it's only like a second, and I was like, "Oh snap!" And like I saw it for like a second, and then when they realize something happened, she's all and like sits back. Like I'm
Well, I
chill.
thought that, that's a really interesting thing, and I totally missed that. I can't believe it. I have to. You're really sharp-eyed. You're an eagle. I'm calling you Mr. Eagle Eye over here. That is a good moment because it plays into like the next moment where after the warbird cloaks again, and Riker's kind of like he's like, asking Counselor Troy like, what's the condition of the crew, and she's like, oh, they're really tense, and he's like, well, what should we do? They need something to do. So he's like, why don't you have everyone start preparing for evacuation?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good move
Right.
because you never know,
Yeah.
it could happen or whatever. But like, I thought that was a moment where like she's like, but what will you do? And he's like, right now, you're needed for everyone else. And so he kind of like, gives Counselor Troy something, to do that'll keep both her and the ship calm because she's
Right.
really tuned into the state of the ship. And so her emotions are sometimes reflective of the state of the whole ship, which is a cool thing. And I think I'm arguing that that's one of the reasons why Counselor Troy and having an empath on board is like a really good thing to help you like kind of make decisions on the ship and stuff like that,
Yeah.
to keep a happy ship basically.
No, I always thought her character was interesting. Like she added some cool stuff sometimes, and she wore tight suits and had big boobs. So
That's very important. And I guess I kind of like wish that there was a much fitter, although a fitter male character. Although Captain Picard's pretty freaking sexy, I have to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, this comes up a lot too because Counselor Troy doesn't really wear a uniform. She's wearing like a kind of
And
a
do they ever
very.
explain that? Like I was like racking my brain, like
I didn't think
why
so.
she's just too cool to
I don't,
wear a uniform.
I have a feeling this comes up in Star Trek: The Next
No,
Generation. I
it
have a
comes up, but it's like reverse. Like they never say why she was allowed to wear what she wore, but they like some other captain comes on and is like, "You better put on a uniform."
Oh,
Like I don't know
that's
what
right.
this is.
Is it? It's gonna be in season 3, isn't it? It's Commander Shelby and that. Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
that
It's
guy. Yeah.
the board thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, personally, I think that like I do think it's cool that Counselor Troy will wear a uniform later on. As for why she wears like these like really comfortable and kind of form-fitting outfits at the moment, I don't know, but like I have to assume as a kind of a humanist and someone who believes that Star Trek shows like the best of humanity, I have to
Mm-hmm.
assume that no one gives a shit. Like in the future, it's just like not a thing. No one stares at women's boobs in a sexual
No.
way. Yes, I think that like humans
No.
I think that men have evolved so that they're very like different from how we are today. And while they may have sexualized thoughts of human women,
Mm-hmm.
they've learned how to like be how to control those thoughts, and sort of kind of like I don't know though. That's yet to be
I
seen.
agree that it's not, like she's not walking down the corridors and homeboys aren't like looking so hard they straight hit the curb, like when she walks
What does
by,
that mean? Wow.
like totally rubbernecking, like,
Oh,
oh,
gotcha.
like, so I agree with you in that aspect, but
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
never
just look at
see.
characters like Barkley, like he's super horny.
He's
Like Horn Dog #1 with his Hollow program, and
But he's very appropriate around Counselor Troy. It's only in the Hollow program where he acts out like
no, right,
these
right, right.
fantasies, And I think that's the difference is that like, and maybe that's something that is going to change
And
for
I feel like
humans.
Worf probably checked her out a couple times too. Like,
I mean, they do end up together, so I'm not going to dispute what you're saying. I mean, he definitely is attracted to her, and Counselor Troy is attracted. There's nothing. I'm not saying that that can't be acknowledged, but it just seems to me like in the Star Trek future, men don't even. It's just like I never see Commander Riker staring at Counselor Troy's boobs, or I never see any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, like the the only episodes where I remember any kind of objectification occurring are like, which I love because it's kind of flipping the message on its head and like kind of showing men what it feels like is
Mhm.
like later on I think some of the women on Star Trek do objectify women, objectify men, and there's like an example I think sort of in the episode where Riker dresses up in that native garb in last season, you know, on a Angel One.
Right, right,
You know, Tasha kind of laughs at him, but she's also like, tiger, you know,
right.
whatever. Like, and also the women on that planet were like very like chauvinistic in the same way that men on our
Mhm.
planet are, you know, so or can be. Which, you know, again, my argument is that like in the future, human men are much more uh, at peace with their sexual fantasies and desires than we are today. And I'm just as guilty on the gay
Well, I
end as any
mean,
straight man,
when you can
but I
walk
have to
into a
work hard, you know.
holo suite and have whatever you want whenever you want, I mean, that right there would probably say anybody's, you know.
Weird desires.
Right.
For lack of a better word. Yep. So I
But we're
think that
kind of far off topic on this one, so.
no, I think that's actually quite relevant, and I do think I'm going to appeal to the engineering and scientific community. Make holosuites real, so that
Yes.
we can start having people, you know, let
Wear
their
form-fitting outfits.
freely without worrying about objectification and catcalling and all that stuff. Because we can get it out of our systems in the holosuite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that was cool. Okay, so I guess you know. I guess do you have anything else to add? Because I'm ready to rate this episode.
Hmm. I feel like there's some. Oh, I liked how just the scene that I thought that like looked kind of crappy was when they were down on the planet, like in that room. But that's beside the point. But I liked the scene where the door kept opening and changing,
Oh,
you
to
know,
different places.
to different
Yeah,
places. I thought that was really cool,
that was
and
really.
I liked how after Data got zapped, and they figured out their, you know, plan. Worf like hoisted him up, and like carried him through. But before he did that, Worf was like, Captain Picard was like, "Oh, just take the doorway," and
Right.
Worf's like, "Oh, well, we don't even know if that's real," and Picard said something like, "Well, this will be our first test," and Worf was just like, "Yeah, all right," like, let's do it,
I
I
mean,
thought that was cool.
it's better than blowing up on
On
the
the
planet.
planet.
Although Worf wouldn't mind, he'd be like,
Yeah.
"Today is a
It's
good
a good day
day
to
to die."
die.
It's so true. Um,
Oh wait, and
what?
then at the end, when he got transported from the Romulan ship,
Mhm.
and like Riker and O'Brien were sitting in transporter room 4 or whatever, 3,
Oh yeah,
whatever.
and
Yeah,
Picard's totally like, "Oh yeah, it looks like you guys were just having a routine old time. I was on this
right.
adventure, you know." And it's like they're all like, "What?" That was really funny. I like that they ended the episode with that kind of
Yeah, it was
humorous.
like kind of comic relief at the end of the
Oh
episode. It
yeah.
was cool.
What did you think of Captain Picard's decision about not just destroying the Iconian technology so that the Romulans couldn't get their hands on it, but even destroying the tricorder so that the Federation couldn't get their hands on it? Do you think that there's knowledge that shouldn't be uh, learned? Like, is that what Captain Picard's saying, or what's going on there?
I don't know. I mean, you could imply like the Romulan side, yeah, because it's so close. Like what they said, like that whatever the name of that planet was like right on the edge of the Romulan
Right,
border of the
Iconia,
neutral
yeah.
zone. So I could see him destroying that one last like doorway thing or whatever. But the tricorder, like, I don't know. I guess, I guess he was trying to keep it from the Federation, but he didn't really like say like no one should have this technology.
He kind of did. He said something along the lines of like, it's just too risky that this technology could get into the wrong. I don't necessarily think he believes that the Federation or Starfleet is the wrong hands. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he is talking only about the Romulans here, but he definitely makes an active decision to prevent this knowledge from being discovered. That's odd for an archaeologist, because you would think like an archaeologist would definitely want to uncover, you know, the not just the cultural parts of a society, but to discover what kind of technology they had, you know.
Well, I'm sure he'll write like a crazy report about it. Yeah,
It's true.
but I think when he had Worf destroy the tricorder, like it was
right
all
decision.
still kind of up in the air. Like they didn't even know if they were going to get off the planet or not. So it was just kind of like maybe like double security that the Romulans won't get.
And it is precarious up there, and I guess, you know, that is a justified reason, because, well, what if the Romulan ship, you know, managed to capture the Enterprise and then they get a hold of this tricorder? So yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I guess that was my only question, but I feel like, yeah, that's a pretty good reason for him to do it. But yeah, it's just a shame, because that's pretty wild technology that the Iconians had, and it would have probably catapulted the Federation to a new place of technological prowess.
What did you think of Captain Donald Varley?
I liked him a lot. I thought he was interesting.
I thought he was pretty smooth looking when he first showed up. I'm like, oh man, this guy's Mr. Smooth.
What do you mean?
Like the actor, like I thought he was just looking all like a G, you know, like oh, what up, you know, like.
I thought he was like, I definitely thought he was kind of grumpy, is the way that I saw him, because he seemed so frustrated from the like the ship problems. But yeah, I guess he was kind of, you know, he would be smooth, because Captain Picard's a pretty smooth character, and like I think that, you know, they both graduated from the same class roughly. They're friends from like, you know, the academy days and stuff like that. So I imagine they're all very similar. It's like meeting one of Captain Kirk's friends, you know, who captained another ship. I imagine that they're all like really iconic kind of characters. I did like Captain Varley, because we also met like in the previous season in the episode Conspiracy, we met like, what was it, like another I can't remember his name now, but another captain that Jean-Luc was friends with, and he was actually friends with like Jack Crusher. And it kind of reminds me of like, this is kind of weird, but like, you know how in Harry Potter there's like definitely a squad of people, like you have your
like your crew, your clique,
your crew or whatever. So it's like Captain Picard's crew so far is pretty badass. I'm not gonna dispute that. You're absolutely right. So I imagine they're all like, you know, I suck at slang, but I imagine that they're all G's. I imagine that all of them are G's, and that they're like completely badass, and you wouldn't want to mess with a fleet of Captain Picard's crew. Although they're all dead now, they all seem to be dying. So I don't know what that.
I think he still keeps meeting old friends. So I don't think he ever stops running into old people.
No, he does meet a lot of old friends, but like it's just weird that a few of his friends are like some of the coolest ones, or other captains, I should say, all end up dead somehow. Cool. That's a good point. And I thought that the Yamato, it would have been interesting to see how it was different, because the bridge was different. It would have been neat to have had a scene maybe where you go aboard and Captain Picard talks to Captain Varley in person. That would have been great, but obviously the budget didn't allow for it, so they had to do everything over the, you know, they like accelerated the plot so that you couldn't have a scene like that. So I still was satisfied with it. I liked it. So it's, I guess, let's go ahead and rate the episode. I'm going to give it.
What is the point system?
It's 10 points. 10 points. We switched somewhere along season 1 from 5 to 10 points. So I'm going to give this one. I really, really liked it. So I'm going to give this one an 8 points out of 10.
That's pretty good. I like it. I'll say 7.
7. Cool. Not far,
like it's not far behind. Bad, but it's not like the greatest. But it's decent. I didn't remember it, but I remembered it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like, when you told me the episode, I was like, what episode is that? Whatever. But then when I saw like the situation they were in with the Romulan ship, I'm like, oh, they're not gonna be able to cloak. Like I remember this, you know, like So it's actually like has interesting, like cool little aspects that obviously stick in your brain, but
I remembered the virus thing and the Iconian thing as two separate episodes. So it was
Hmm.
kind of cool to watch it and then be like, oh, that was the same episode.
Okay.
Which, unless there's another episode in the future where the Enterprise gets a virus again. But I know that the computer goes through some other fun things later on in the seasons to come, but I can't remember specifically. I just kind of have these vague remembrances or recollections. I thought, like thinking about it, it just kind of occurred to me. There was that episode with the Takan Empire in season 1. Remember, with the Takan kind of when it was the first episode with the Ferengis, and it was kind of an interestingly similar, not exactly similar, but somewhat similar thing where like this planet had like an advanced, long extinct, you
Hmm.
know, remnant of a long extinct empire called the Takan Empire, and remember
Right.
their like guardian was this like hologram or whatever that like has been active for like thousands and thousands of years.
Hmm.
And remember, like he's holding the Ferengi ship and the Enterprise in the planet's orbit, and it's draining the crystals from the planet are draining the power from the two ships.
Hmm.
So similar, I guess. What are those called? Tropes.
Yeah.
Similar kind of tropes going on, but different enough where I was like, oh, okay, I'm satisfied.
Right.
That was the only
I mean,
thing.
there's definitely you run into advanced technological civilizations in Star Trek universe, like not as often as the holodeck goes awry, but like
But it makes
often enough.
yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like, archaeology, space archaeology must be really, 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 really fun.
Hmm.
And I like that we get a little bit of the adventures of like different space archaeologists throughout Star Trek: The Next Generation, just because Captain Picard happens to have that as one of his interests. So I
Right.
like that too. Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed our discussion. I thank you for
Yeah.
joining me this evening, Mr. Sater.
Yeah.
Lots of
Always
fun.
happy to.
All right, so I'm going to sign us off in just a second, but I want to say live long and prosper to you.
Live long and prosper.